afternoon, Xbox Nation. Welcome to this week's new episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special. I'm your host, Mr. BoomStick XL. Folks, we have an absolutely outstanding 90 minutes for you today. We're going to be getting into some hot button topics. The Avowed 30 frames versus 60 conversation that I saw a lot of people talking about over the weekend and in the socials, one of which happens to be Steel Rain on Living Split Screen with Pong Soul this past Saturday. If you missed it, don't worry. I'm going to send it. I'm going to drop the link in there so you not only you can check out what we're talking about, but you can also subscribe to his YouTube channel. We're also going to be getting into, well, the media. The gaming media seems to refuse to acknowledge Concord's disastrous launch. As a matter of fact, we've seen some pretty positive reviews from, well, a few questionable places. Look, we're not going to be dancing on the bones of this game. It's bad. It is a bad game. It's unfortunate that it was in development as long as it was. The question, though, we're going to really be answering or asking, at least for the chat and the panel members here, is where does Sony go next? Right? Because Jade Raymond's game coming out, that's kind of, it's very, very similar to Payday. I don't know if that game is going to hit. Again, we've seen a lot of big cancellations. You know, Twisted Metal was canceled. The Last of Us Online, Last of Us 2 Online was canceled. There was a rumored military shooter in development, which again, no one's going to tell me otherwise until someone tells me otherwise. It was something SOCOM related, or at least similar. That would have been fantastic. And all of the ones that would have hit, I should say, are not there. And we're left with this. This game, unfortunately, is I don't even think it's broke 1,000 concurrent players, which that's just not good. And we're going to get into that. And of course, Star Wars Outlaws, ladies and gentlemen. The reviews are in, and Steel and I were literally just talking about it. Yep. I'm getting it through Ubisoft Plus. I pay the monthly $18. It's not a problem. I don't know how much of this game is as broken as it's set, as a lot of people. I mean, I've seen videos that are just, wow, dude, it's bad. So listen, before you spend the bucks, maybe you should get Ubisoft Plus for a month and try it that way. I mean, that's how I play the Ubisoft games anyway, because it is a streaming service that when you pay for it, you get the maximum $130 edition for every game that releases. This year, you got Star Wars Outlaws, you got Assassin's Creed Red. So you'll get your money's worth for sure. But let's introduce the panel here. Steel Rain, what's going on? Seen here on a Monday. Great to have you here. Great to specifically get into the Avowed conversation because, look, quite frankly, there were a lot of outlets that covered it. IGN, again, I don't like to give IGN too much credit, but I do have to give credit to Destin Legary, who was provided footage, and he did a fantastic voiceover basically showing the gameplay. Obviously, shout out to Paris Lilly and, of course, Danny Pena over at Gamertag Radio. They had a great sit-down with the developers. I mean, listen, you got to, of course, tip your cap to Cognito and Matty Plays for actually breaking the story with the 30 frames per second and during their interview. And then, of course, Clovereel had put out an hour's worth of footage with different classes. I've watched that twice now. Okay. I got to tell you, man, I am very, very excited for this game. But how are you feeling, man? Welcome back.
I'm doing good, man, and it's exciting to be here on a Monday. You guys never get me. Boom, send out the signal in the background, and for as many Mondays as I can muster on up, I think I'll come on through and hang out with you guys and keep it live, raw, and uncut, like I like to say. Yeah, man, if you're anybody that's not familiar, I am a co-host on Living Split Screen along with my brother from another, Pong Soul. In Living Split Screen is a non-console centric platform covering everything going on within the gaming industry. And because we like to take that RTS approach, I think that's a beautiful thing to bring here with Mr. BoomStick XL as well, and my brother Fuzzy, because I think these gentlemen tend to take that same kind of approach, pulling yourself out of the world, looking at those darker crevices of those maps, and pulling those resources together so we can build up our foundation, not only for this conversation, but also for those potential 2 to 3 billion gamers that are out there. So yeah, man, it's a beautiful time to be on. Beautiful morning, almost afternoon, or whenever anybody ends up listening. So yeah, man, it's a pleasure to be here and ready to get into these topics.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And of course, Fuzzy Belvedere, welcome back, brother. We have a lot to get into. How you feeling? How was your weekend?
Sorry about that. Feeling great. Glad to be here with you guys, man. It is it's an awesome time to be a gamer, and so glad we have Steel Rain on here today, especially with these topics, because I know he's going to dive deep into the frame, like frames per second, as far as with a lot of games and how much it's important to gaming in today's climate and everything. But man, it's great to see that Xbox has a ton of games on the roadmap and ready to go. And hey, we're going to get into some of that as well. But man, it's funny how the media, gives, they treat PlayStation with kid gloves, and Xbox, they always punch them in the face kind of thing, even when they don't do anything wrong. But yeah, we're going to get into it.
Look, folks, the consistent talk of the mythical Xbox tax. Now, we've said it before. A lot of people disagree, think that it doesn't exist. That's fine if you do. I'm going to push back on you and say that's not my opinion. And great, we can have differences of opinions, and we can walk away and still be friends. Mm-hmm. Seeing what has happened with 2 games, not 1, but 2, goes to show me that PlayStation as a company has its hands in many cookie jars, and the ad revenue for a lot of these sites that will not push back even when the game is bad or does have bugs here we are. The 2 games, of course, I'm talking about is Concord, and again, we're going to get back to this in a second, but Black Myth Wukong, which a lot of people are enjoying. The game looks gorgeous. Let's not make a mistake, and that is day 1 a purchase for me when it comes to Xbox. But it's not on Xbox right now. It's been reviewed quite a bit on PC. Mm-hmm. Only 2 or 3 reviews since its launch on the 20th. I mean, I'm no mathematician, folks, but it's the 26th.
Yeah.
It's a little weird energy, if you will. Why we're not getting any major reviews for Black Myth, because obviously, it does have bugs. Now, listen, Infinite Umbra, who we all know, did an amazing a review in progress post. Go check it out. It's like, if you have any inkling to wanting to buy this on PC, you definitely check it out. He's I think he's up to chapter 4, and his write-up is it's phenomenal. Please go check that out if you're interested, or like me, just wait until the Xbox version, and hopefully we will get a perfect version. Again, I got some information about that we'll get into regarding why it's not on Xbox and why it's been delayed indefinitely, folks. Some big problems with it, not only on PC and currently on PS5, but it kept failing. There's this error that keeps happening. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. We're going to get into that, but I want to open up with a very hot topic.
Okay.
Avowed showed really, really well during Gamescom. I think, and again, I'm speaking for myself, there wasn't anything about the game that I did not say, holy shit, I cannot wait to play this in 2025. Why can't I play it now? So what I really kind of want to curtail is this idea, at least from this channel, that just because 30 frames doesn't bother me doesn't mean that it's up for criticism. Right? That I want that to be completely clear. Now, I played Starfield at 30 and loved every minute of the 5+ days I played. I played Dragon's Dogma at 30, no problem. Hellblade 2, 30, no problem. Even Avowed at 30, and it has its problems, but I still played through it. Now, I'm a console guy. I don't make any excuses for it. I don't have a PC. I have means to get one, but I don't care to, because I am a console guy.
Well, you shouldn't have to. Yeah.
Right? So when I say, Steel, 30 frames for Avowed is not going to bother me one iota, rest assured that Well, that's the truth. I'm not capping for Obsidian, but I will say that there is room for criticism. Now, if you are in the camp of someone that was sold next generation as being, well, Aaron Greenberg, the tweet continues to come up, standard fare moving forward is going to be 60 frames per second, right? I mean, he said it in the tweet, and that continues to make the rounds. Well, a lot of games aren't launching at 60 frames, some of which are not launching with modes that give you the ability to play at 60, 1440p. And again, right on your screen right now is a perfect example of that. The new Monster Hunter that's coming out by Capcom.
Wilds?
Yeah, it's 30 frames. That's been confirmed. Now, again, I don't have a problem with the games in 30. I prefer the high fidelity graphics over the 60 frames, but that's just me. But still, this is one of those situations where you're starting to see a very massive divide. Like, there are a lot of people in my camp that are saying, hey, boom, 30 is okay with me. I want the high fidelity. I want the detailed areas, the world, the characters, the lighting. And you know what? Again, for me, that's okay. But I do think, and again, folks, the game does not release for an additional 6 months. We still have 6 months before that game releases, or 5.5, give or take, depending on the week. They could very well add the 1440/60, because remember, during that interview when they confirmed for 30, they said the last thing that they do is put the extra work into the frames.
Right.
They wanted 30, they got it to 30. That's what they said that they wanted. But I believe that even though they haven't admitted this, and no one is talking about this deal, that the delay until February of 2025 may in fact have been because of how crowded the fall is going to be for new releases. Right. I honestly believe in my heart of heart it was in fact to address the 60 frame per second crowd that is going to make their opinions known, and well, they have. Let's get into your thoughts about that 30 versus 60.
Well, I'm of the mind that no matter what, people should stand for whatever they believe in, right? If you think that 30 frames is good enough, then cool. I'm not here to sway your opinion, change your mind, make you believe something that I believe or anything like that. But my perspective is we are in X console generation now. Things are supposed to be more consistent than ever. We're on very similar platforms with our competitors now. There should be ways to at least set a new standard, right? And I thought that that's what this generation was going to more so be about, once we started finding out that both consoles were very similar to each other. There wasn't much else out there that could separate them out. So what do? Well, let's start focusing in on performance. Now, as we've seen this whole console generation, performance has been very lackluster, getting more games that aren't releasing completely, or aren't performance friendly or not optimized properly. Even to your point, which you were talking about Star Wars Outlaws earlier. I hadn't seen none of the bad gameplay yet. I heard some stuff about the AI, which is something that does bother me and would turn me off of a game. So to see things like that still happen lets me know that there's something else fundamentally wrong. For me, 60 FPS needs to be the only mandate that I personally believe that should exist in the gaming industry as of 2018. Reason being is because no matter what, whether you think that single player games play better at 30 or you want more visual fidelity, there is nothing saying that you still cannot have your visual fidelity. And again, the thing that people go to is, oh, I'd rather have the 4K. You're not getting 4K now. Right. Point blank, period. You haven't got it since the beginning of this generation. You're only getting 4K on older games that are being up-res to 4K. Right now, we're still getting new games that are being upscaled to 4K. So if we're not getting the native resolution in these games, then I think there's something else that is much more obvious that needs to be focused on. And I think from the very beginning of development, and again, I'm not a game designer. If I was, that would be one of my main pillars that I would stand on, because for me, the feeling that you get from playing a game separates it out from what you get visually. Right now, they both go very well hand in hand with each other. But since 60 frame games have started becoming more relevant in these high quality production, AAA budget style games, even AA style games, it is hard to argue, at least in my eyes, that, oh, well, 30 is better than 60. I'd rather sacrifice the way that this game feels because I'd rather it look pretty. Now, again, for me as a gamer, somebody who puts my hands on the controller and I am controlling whatever character in whatever world and whatever space, again, it is very hard for me to believe somebody tell me that 30 feels better than 60 does. That is incorrect. You are misplaced. And I get if you are okay with it, but that is something completely different than what the truth is, right? So for me, Avowed possibly not being 60 FPS on launch is another sign of just the times that we're in currently, right? There is obviously something off within the dev cycle, whether it's at the top or whatever. But again, we're getting more devs. Even shout out to God Howard, shout out to my boy, my guy Pong, who refers him as the God. Even Todd Howard says that he would rather have games at 30 FPS because of the visual fidelity. Again, please show me where Starfield is 4K 30 consistently on console. Okay. And then once you show me that, also show me how all of a sudden, when I was told from the very beginning that 60 FPS probably wasn't going to be possible on Starfield until we got the next generation boxes and they upscaled they changed the processor. You need more graphical power and they're just doing so much. Now we got the Series S even doing, and before they did the official update, we had a mod for the Series S to play 60 FPS without any real changes to the resolution. It was still at 1080p. Maybe even a little bit higher from what I was seeing in these mods. And this is on console. These are console mods. I'm not talking about on PC. So again, it may just be a personal thing for most people on what you prefer and what you value more than the other thing. And again, I'm not here to debate whether what you value over another thing. But as somebody that has been a gamer for a long time, who favors action-oriented combat, who understands that the feeling of your games, because we are not in a medium where I would rather watch the majority of my gameplay or it feel somewhat sluggish, because this is not a QTE ridden game. This isn't a Netflix game where it's not that. I always will lean on the side of the feeling of playing your games, of being more important. And again, there's frame timing that goes into there as well. And sure, tightening up frame times. And again, these are things that most people aren't going to care about. But I do agree is equally as important. But let's aim for 60 and nail those frame times down if the developers find those things important. I just want us as gamers to start getting more of what I've always believed was important, was getting some of those minor details for the gamer, so that you have more of that connection to whatever world that you end up putting yourself in, right? That instant connection of, man, when I press a button, it does this. When I do this, it does this. When I'm walking through here, it feels good. Everything transitions very naturally. There isn't a micro stutter here. Even if it is optimized the best on, again, shout out to my brother Pong, who said even on console, 30 FPS for Starfield, it felt good. Speaks to frame timing. They got it right. But when they released that 60 FPS update, I saw so many people say it feels like a completely different game, because that's just what it does. First or third person, there is that feeling of difference. And I just want people to kind of keep that in mind as they move into the future. You can have some of both, But keep in mind, you're not, every time that you speak to, oh, I'd rather have visual fidelity, please ask yourself, when are we not getting games that are not being upscaled, or are we not getting games that are not their native resolution, or whatever the case. So yeah, man, that's kind of my insight on it. I don't think that Avowed is being pushed back for that. It could very well be the reason that they stated, hey, it's crowded. Oh, hey, we want you to do your backlog. Again, I like to step back more into the honesty side of things, and I'd have to take them at their face value. But for me,
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's definitely
for
fair.
me, it just tells me that, hey, they needed more time. They wanted to make sure to polish this up. And if they have the time to do it, you might as well give them the time to do it. So,
I mean, great points all around as always. And again, this is a continuing conversation from what you and Pong had on Saturday, and I kind of wanted to forward it. And I know there's some people in the chat like, "Hey, 30 versus 60, move on." I hear you. You don't have to stay here if you don't like to. But this is an important conversation to have because the community wants to have it. And if the community wants to have the conversation, rest assured, I'm going to do my homework and deliver a conversation that people are going to be interested in hearing. Now, if you don't want to hear it, there's always the fast forward button. But everyone is still welcome to hang out. Now, look, Fuzzy, 30 versus 60 is a conversation that continues to happen. At the 4-year mark, which is what we're about to hit for these consoles, many people, like myself and Steele, and I'm sure you, thought that we would have been at a place where, like Aaron Greenberg said all those years ago, 60 was going to become the standard. Now, whether you believe the developers or you don't, the 30 frame for many of these games, many of these big games that we're playing, Starfield, Dragon's Dogma, you're obviously going to have the new Monster Hunter, you got Avowed, you had Hellblade, you had Starfield, which of course Starfield got the big update. And as a matter of fact, like 60 on the potato is unbelievable. Like that's happening right now. I don't necessarily disagree with Steele when he says that he wants to take the developers at their word, where they pushed it back for the fact that yes, it's just a packed full. It honestly is. There are so many games that we're just not. You're going to have to pick a handful, and that's what you're going to have to play, and then just add these other ones to your backlog. Avowed would not have been one of those games for me. I would have been there day and date and playing that from the start. And again, for me, at least, Indiana Jones is December. So I have all of September, October, November to get what I have to get through to enjoy my games. And then December, which is usually very quiet, is I get a chance to play what I believe is going to be my game of the year, just based on my fandom for Indiana Jones. But bringing it back into Avowed, even though I agree, and I believe that, yes, they wanted to get Avowed out of the way of something like the next Dragon Age. Like the next Dragon Age that game looks amazing. It looks like BioWare.
I've never been
back.
excited before.
Oh my God, BioWare! Holy cow! Right? So that game looks great. That game is coming out. Do you really want to put Avowed against this behemoth? Because again, say what you want about BioWare, and they have not been hitting in years, but this looks like they were cooking. There's no doubt about it. So I agree with Obsidian. You know, you wait it out. You don't wait too long. You know what I'm saying? Because if November, hypothetically, if it would have come out in November, you're waiting 4 months. Comes out in February, not that big of a deal. But I think that there is something to be said about a potential of, you know, the best of both sides of the coin. We're getting this game out of the way of everyone else, but while it's there, it's cooking, we can potentially, and again, this is just my opinion, they add that 60 frame mode with the 1440p because now they have the time to do it, right? What are your thoughts on the very, very, blatant divide with the community when it comes to 30 versus 60? Because there are a lot of people that are in the camp of, I wanted to feel better. I want to feel good at 60. And people like me, who honestly, no excuses, I don't care. I like the detailed fidelity. I like everything looking like it's a movie that I'm playing,
Mhm.
and you get that at 30 frames.
Mhm.
So again, playing through all these other games that were 30 frames were not a problem for me. This won't be for me an issue. And I really and I got to say this, and this is not taking or making any excuses. If you are that strung up or hung up on the 60 frames, you probably either are already playing on PC or you probably should be. Let's get your hot take, man.
Well, I kind of agree with that last point, but it is a tough balance. And from the community standpoint, there's always going to be this divide because most people are going to enjoy the games at 30 frames, or I would say the majority. The us enthusiasts or the vocal crowd that prefer to have it in 60 and would love for the console games to have that as the core standard moving forward, especially throughout this generation. I think unfortunately we're not the majority, or Xbox or even some of the third party publishers aren't really listening. And I don't know how else for us to get this message across, because you'll hear comments like the devs are like, oh, they wanted this in this creative vision, but yet that only exists on console. It's not like they forced it on PC. They'll say things like, oh, well, we don't we feel that a lot of people want to play at 30 frames, or this is the best possible for first person perspective and whatnot. And it's like, deep down, I think some of these people actually know that that may not be true, or know that it's not true. But I think on the priority list of what things are getting done by them, that's probably at the bottom of the list. Like, the publisher wants to get the game out there. If it functions, great. We'll sell copies. You guys can, based on how many copies we sell, you may get the overtime to continue working on getting the 60 frames thing. And I don't know any other way other than a lot of us that prefer the 60, other than moving to PC, are ever going to get this in console. Because I think even with the next generation of console, you still have devs, and I point this finger squarely at Remedy, but there are other devs that do this same thing. Rockstar is kind of guilty of this as well, where the more power you give them in these consoles, the more they're going to turn up all of the other stuff, the specular lighting, the particle effects, and all of that. So no matter what, next generation will probably still have 30 frame games, and that's aside from Grand Theft Auto 6, because like I said, those studios typically will push all of the other limits, and the frame rate, as long as they can get the pacing down, that's good enough. The PC crowd, when they eventually release something like Grand Theft Auto 6 on PC, you'll probably have to have a beast of a machine to do it at 60, or you'll have to turn things down to like 1080 and just to upscale from there type of deal. But in the grand scheme of things, I think the priority list for the publishers, and maybe even the devs direct, is just to get the game complete. Make sure whatever, like from the publisher standpoint, make sure whatever monetization stuff is in their forefront and ready to go and functioning. Make sure that the game is functioning, so you're not getting a whole bunch of purchases and then returns. Although PlayStation doesn't have to worry about that because they tend to deny returns or refunds. But in the grand scheme of things, I think it just comes down to us as enthusiasts either have to be vocal in a different way, whether that means delaying the purchase. But then again, Microsoft being this company of numbers, I always look at the numbers that they sometimes focus on as bad data to some extent. And an example of this would be the DVR, because you remember early on they were talking about, well, people don't use the DVR, but they're not looking at the bigger picture of why they're not using the DVR. If the DVR is broken or not functioning as well as it is on other platforms, then why are people going to use it? But if they just see that people aren't using it, they assume that it's not a popular feature, or that people don't want it. And much like if we let's say we delay purchasing the games until they have the 60 frame option or performance mode or something like that, then they'll say, well, maybe this player base isn't interested in this style of game, instead of looking at, no, we're only delaying the purchase because you didn't have it, in our eyes, complete out the door.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, when it comes to delaying a game, I would prefer, if they're going to delay a game, well, actually, backing up a little bit, I really wish, and I know that not, and this is not just for Xbox, this is just for any game publisher in general. I really wish they wouldn't talk about release dates until they know they have like a lot of the basics buttoned up. And it's just a matter of, the polishing phase, kind of like what Nintendo does in general. Like, you don't hear a lot from them until the stuff is pretty close to the finish line. And I know us as gamers, we get annoyed and we fuss on the internet about not hearing when there's a release date or when they're going to show this game or what's the update. But to some extent, I kind of wish that they would wait, because now, instead of talking about all the great stuff of Avowed, like every time they show that game, it looks better. But now we're focusing on the 60 versus 30. And
Yes.
Once again, it's not that it's not everybody is focused on it. A lot of us are still looking at the overall, the story, the choices and things like that as the important parts. But
Right.
I'm going to probably play it on PC just for the fact that 60 frames, although, but I'm also going to play it in third person. So I could probably get away with playing at 30 on my Series X and not have much of a problem, as long as it's as smooth as what Starfield was at launch. But now that I have a PC, it's kind of like, well, I want all the bells and whistles. I want the ray tracing and I want the 60 frames. If that means I have to scale it down to 1080 and upscale to my 1440 monitor, so be it. So that way I can get the ray tracing and everything on it and have it at 60, or maybe I can bump it up to 90. And in a lot of cases, it's weird to me that, people can mod like Starfield. There were like Steele said, there was a mod for, and I knew this was going to happen when people were like, oh, well, it'll be a year before they have 60 frames. Well, it kind of was for the official one, but I said it would be like less than 2 months. And it was around that time frame where we had that on console. Like it's funny to me that modders can not outdo, but at least beat the actual dev company or the devs to the punch as far as 60 frames. But then again, their priority was to work on the expansion. Their priority was to work on some of the additions and quality of life stuff, which is great. I'm not going to fault them on that. But it's almost like gamers as a whole, not just PC, but console, should start nudging more and more of the casual, like, hey, here's what the differences are when it's at 60 versus 30. Like, for a lot of people, I hate to use this analogy, but me being the car enthusiast I am, you don't know how good a Ferrari is until you drive one. So if you're not driving a Ferrari, you're just driving, let's say, your Mustang. You think it's fast as heck. It's an awesome car. It's great. And don't get me wrong, I love Mustangs. I've had several myself, but
it's different.
You drive that Ferrari one time, you look at that Mustang totally different.
Not even compared.
And until you have to pay the insurance bill or service bill or something like that. But in all honesty, that's kind of the problem that gaming is going to have until a majority or the casuals, and even some that are enthusiasts that don't focus on the frame rate. They just might focus on the story, because there are some that just they love the engagement of the story, or they love the actual combat, even if it's not Twitch quick type of combat. That's going to be one of those things that, as a whole, until we get to that point where even the casuals and those that don't care about the frame rate start saying something, which it's going to be like pulling teeth at that point, these devs aren't going to change their priorities. The publishers definitely aren't going to change their priorities, because that means more money in costs of development and probably longer time before they can get a return on investment. So I lean towards 60 frames being that should have been the standard. They kind of, Greenberg kind of hinted to it. Unfortunately, everybody's going to tweet them or quote them on that. And unfortunately, nobody sent that memo to the devs. But hey, it is what it is. But I encourage those that do want 60, start looking at building that PC, because it's not going to probably change even with the next generation. Like I said, devs are going to always push the limits of what the game can do with AI, have more AI on screen, or better, shadows and things like that. Other things that will cost processing power, they'll focus on that all before frame rate. At least for some, well, I'll say many devs. There are some devs that seem to prioritize frame rate. Like Capcom seems to be one that prioritizes, although Monster Hunter is not one of those games. So I guess it depends on what what they're working on or how big of a scale the game is and stuff. But yeah, I just wish this was like, I'm hoping with it being delayed till February, which it made sense to move it out of the way of other things and have it where we have a nice launch to 2025. I just hope they have the 60 frames patch ready to go, and then all of this will go for naught at that point. But we'll see.
Well, I mean, listen, again, it's just a theory. They do have 5.5 months to get it done. The game looks incredible, and it looks done. Like, they could have released that game, and it would have been reviewed very well. Oh, I mean, like, even the most stout websites were impressed with it. Same thing with Indiana Jones. Those are two games that are gonna hit. I'm very excited for it. Love the opinions from everybody here. I see the chat going back and forth with each other, politely, of course, regarding the 60 versus 30. And again, this is no dig at anyone who's a PC head. If you are someone that plays on PC regularly or dually, like you play on PC half the time, the other half of you're on your series, then you're probably going to play Avowed at 60 frames if it's not available at launch, rather than your console on your PC, because you're going to want all the bells and whistles that Fuzzy was just talking about. Someone like me who does not care is going to enjoy it exactly the same way I enjoyed all those other 30 frame games and put as much time into it. Is not a problem. But then again, that's me. I am a console gamer. I don't care. But again, that's why I wanted to have this conversation, because even though I personally don't care, that doesn't mean that your opinion isn't valued and that it's not worth having a conversation over, because again, there are going to be people that were sold this next gen hardware. And again, this is PlayStation also. Now, I can't say if Avowed ever releases on PlayStation, is it going to launch at 30 as well? I would imagine that at that point, everything's going to be 60, if that even happens. But at least there's time in front of us from now to February to its official release that they could very well add a 60 frames mode, dropping it down to 1440p. I think it's very doable. I'm not a developer, but from some of the people that I talked to, based on what we saw, the game does look done. And to prioritize the frames is not that Herculean type of effort that if they didn't already, have plans for it. Because remember, Starfield launched at 30, and what happened? Obviously the mods, but I'm saying, like, officially it ran at 60, and now it's even running 60 on Series S. Now, again, if you want to wait until it's 60 and you don't have a PC, there's a lot of games to play, and you'd probably be able to get away with it. I'm not waiting. I'm going to play it and quite much enjoy it at 30 frames. But again, hopefully they do address the 60 frames for the gamers that are console gamers that want to play on console, and they address that 60 frame issue. But gentlemen, let's get into the gaming media and how they refuse to acknowledge Concord's Disastrous launch. Now, I sent you guys a bunch of things. We've seen, I keep hearing the terminology kid gloves, and I think people are onto something with this. And this is where we get into where I believe there is an absolute Xbox tax. Hypothetically, if this would have been a game that was published and produced by an Xbox first-party studio and published by Microsoft, it would have been put through the ringer. Honestly, from inception of launch, you would have probably had about 70 articles, some of which would have been doubles and triples from multiple writers on a publication, because the hate brigade would have come out and they would have driven this into the ground as it deserves, because the game is just not good. And if Xbox put out a game like that, let's see, what was that? Oh, Redfall. Redfall was destroyed. And you know what? To be fair, the criticism that came behind that game, even though I enjoyed it, that game was broken at launch. It was broken 2 times at every angle. And it just did not launch well. And eventually they got it to 60. Eventually they did all, the big patch. It runs great now. Is it still? I'll put it this way: it's not the greatest game since sliced bread, but I very much enjoyed my time with it. With all of that said, and I'm gonna go in reverse order here. I'm gonna go Fuzzy first. Fuzzy, when you look at how the quote unquote kid gloves are being put on for Redfall, one of the running narratives that I saw, and again, this is no names because we don't do names here. Everyone jumping in front of the bullets for this studio because of how poor this game was. Now, here on Double Barrel Gaming, we don't dance on the graves of anyone's failures. We don't want to see anyone fail. That is clear as day in the way I produce these shows. But not talking about something that is a disaster as this, well, that's not going to happen. We are going to talk about it. And there were a lot of media types that were jumping in front of the bullets or the arrows for this studio and their lackluster launch. I'm sorry to say this game is an epic failure. It has no appealing qualities whatsoever. The character design is egregious. The price point at $40 tells me that if you don't think that there's problems within SIE and PlayStation, you're putting your head in the sand, because this is a perfect example of the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. Nobody puts a gas game out and charges you $40 for it. That's this bad. And where this really goes, and again, this should be clear as day for you. The last PlayStation show that was awful had this game there. And on top of having this game here and telling us that they wanted to charge gamers $40 for what a lot of people called a dollar store Guardians of the Galaxy type of character and cast, you have Marvel rivals that not only slapped on that PlayStation show, but have since then just taken over conversation when it comes to hero shooters, and every character will be free to play at launch. Just straight up bonkers. This was going to fail one way or another. And I think where we get into the media is protecting Sony and protecting PlayStation is how there are no articles talking about this. There's been a few. Destin Legary just did a video where he destroyed this game. I didn't get a chance to read it. Someone had sent me, quite a few people sent it to me. I'm going to check it out after the show. And I'm sure he's going to be very pointed, as he can be, and I can't wait to hear it. But the truth of the matter is, Fuzzy, this should be an alarm bell for Sony. I think that, again, as bad as the game is, we're not going to drive the point home any further. We've already said our piece. You can say yours, and not worry about any arrows, because you have every right to give this game the business. But I think the bigger question here on the back end is, this has failed. Now, Helldivers on PC did super well. That has fallen off unbelievably. That's not making money for them like it once did. Now, could it come back? Yeah, I would imagine if they do like a big update, they're going to bring some of the players back, but it's just not hitting anymore. This has failed. Jade Raymond's game, there's been no talk of that. Fair Games looks like it looks like another version of this, just a different type. And then, of course, now we're hearing Jason Schreier reported that Marathon is in really poor shape. Sony's in a pickle, folks. I said this last night on Dave's show. I will say it again now. If you think that it's doom and gloom for Xbox because they're putting games on PlayStation, you need to ask yourself, what the hell is PlayStation doing? There's no roadmap. They went gas, canceled 7 out of the 12. What they have left is not hitting, and we have no idea what first party is working on. Folks, I'm here to tell you, you should be asking some questions about what Sony's doing. Let's talk about it.
Where to begin? All right. I said this, early on when we first saw the game, I thought it was players versus bots because the other team characters didn't look interesting at all. They look extremely generic. And come to find out that is the case. Was it 16 or 18 characters? Only about 8 of them have some sort of style to them that looks redeemable. But outside of that, this game was never for me, so I'm not going to go into it too much. But where the gaming media, I wouldn't say they piss me off, but they definitely disappoint me. If we recall, Lawbreakers didn't do so well on PlayStation, and the media called out Xbox fans for talking to Cliffy B about bringing it to Xbox and why it was better. Like the media focused on why it was better to launch it on PlayStation, because there's more players or whatever the case is, but they didn't show up for that game. Then Bleeding Edge came out and they badmouthed that game into oblivion. I mean, it was a passion project that the team just wanted to get out of their system kind of thing and see if it had any legs to it. I still think the characters were far more interesting than the ones here for I was about to say Guardians of the Galaxy, for Concord. But I would say put some of those characters in Killer Instinct, especially the guitar guy and the samurai guy. At least those two, and a lot of other ones would work well in Killer Instinct as well. But they badmouth that, and that started on launch weekend on Steam with 2,000 players.
Yes,
I think Concord would kill to have that many, and we all know what happened to Bleeding Edge. But once again, the gaming media gave it a bad rap right off the rip and never gave it a chance. Nothing saying like, "Oh, you should give it a chance," or "Well, there's good bones there." None of that. It was like, burn it. Why is Microsoft buying these places? They don't know how to manage anything. This is stupid. Blah blah blah. Tons of articles on it. Redfall comes out, kind of the same thing. I mean, yeah, Redfall had its issues. It was kind of made while unsupervised per se kind of thing, but there was some good bones in it and people enjoyed it. And then with some of the updates, people enjoyed it more, but ultimately it led to the closure of that particular studio or that portion of the studio that worked on it. And the media didn't back off once as far as badmouth in that game. No revisits like, "Hey, I'm playing this after the updates." None of that. So it seems like there's a pattern whenever it's an Xbox game in particular or Xbox can be crapped on, they do it. But if it's PlayStation, oh no, we should give this a chance. Oh, not having a roadmap or a lineup of games is a good thing because reasons. I don't know. But
one game per year. Oh, that's excellent. No, you should hope for one game per year.
Yeah.
There you go.
It's just a weird thing that the media is not, and I don't mean to harp on a failure or a misstep of a studio, but to have people constantly do articles on Starfield, the game that people forgot, but yet they're still writing on it. I mean, there's tons of people still playing it, maybe not as many as launch, but it's a single player game. So I guess they forgot about that. But if you're going to harp over a game like Starfield that people forgot about or losing 90% of its player base, like it would be nice if you even had enough of a player base to lose some of them and then have a percentage loss kind of thing. But the media is going to do what they do. I'm going to say this now until Xbox transforms again kind of thing. PlayStation is blue bubble. Xbox is green bubble, at least here in the States. If anybody outside the US doesn't understand that, just understand that iPhone is the dominant platform, and kids even get bullied over having Android instead of an iPhone. So it's kind of
awful, by the way.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing with these consoles. And when it comes to the gaming media, if Xbox does it, it's terrible, bad, whatever. But the minute PlayStation does it, it's great. Or if something like completely craps the bed, like Bungie, like who knew that Bungie was supposed to be the better acquisition than Activision? But
according to some, yeah.
No, but I have to at least put some of the blame on Bungie, because if it wasn't for them, I guess, trying to protect their, hierarchy position over at PlayStation, we would have probably had factions. We probably would have had that Spider-Verse game, but it seems like they were the ones that shot it down. And the only game that really, or one of the games that survived, was one from some former Bungie employees that worked on Destiny. So it was like, oh, well, I guess the core team over at Destiny was like, well, they'll never match us. It's like our little brother. They're cool. All the other ones, oh no, they got to get them out of here. But I really wish somebody over at Naughty Dog would grab their cojones and go into a board meeting and say, we're going to put factions live today, and I guarantee you we'll have 10 times the amount of players on it without even having to advertise. Like, it could just be a tweet on Twitter or X or whatever you call it now. And I guarantee you factions 2 would have more players in 24 hours than if you would add every player that's ever played Concord, like on a daily basis, combine those days, and I think it would still beat it in the first 24 hours. But nobody's going to do that, unfortunately. I guess Sony is learning the hard way of, games as a service is hard. And luckily Xbox has put in the time and effort and has a ton of games that are like that are working out for them. And hopefully at some point Sony will find something that works for them. I mean, they need to find a way to incentivize PC people to sign up for PSN. Just give away free skins or free season map, or not season map, but like a free, battle pass or something. Like anything to at least convince them. So if that's what you really want, if you can't live with knowing that these people are on Steam but still playing your game, then find a way to incentivize them to sign up for a PSN. But other than that, I don't know what Helldivers 2 does. When it comes to fair games, that's Payday 3 knockoff kind of.
Yep.
If anything, they better go back to the drawing board and make it, GTA Online and not just Payday 3 knockoff, and do the heists and do other stuff and make sure you have clothing, cars, and houses and businesses like GTA does to maybe, have something that will hold them over as far as a good, games as a service for them. But yeah, it's like crickets when it comes to critiques on PlayStation. I mean, as a PlayStation owner, I find that I'm probably one of the few critiques. I know BitCloud does it as well, and even Mr. Badbit on occasion. But I critique the battery life on the controller. I critique the stupid menus. I critique the fact that nobody's talking about a roadmap. And just why can't these things be on PC? Like I'm looking forward to Gran Turismo coming to PC at some point, but we'll see if that ever happens. But right now, Concord, I would say it's probably better to cut their losses on that today. Unfortunately, I don't mean closing the studio, just close the server, put that team on something else, or maybe hand them whatever, Naughty Dog was working on with factions and say, get this to the finish line, put this out ASAP and go from there. I think that would be a much better call. I know that sounds crazy, but I guarantee you that game, if it's anything remotely like the day before, or at least the vibe of what the day before was supposed to be, that would be at least enough of a hit for Sony to be satisfied, I think. Because look at how many people wish listed that game. I think if you were to go head to head on the number of wish lists versus Black Myth Wukong versus the day before it was known to be a scam, I think that one the day before outdid Black Myth Wukong, but I could be wrong. So we'll see. But it's a shame. But leave it to the podcasters and the handful of the media that may say something and then get blacklisted by PlayStation and never get codes in the future. So it is what it is.
I mean, listen, it's clear as day what is happening. Criticism over criticism for one brand, which is Team Green, and not so much for Team Blue. And again, your mileage is gonna vary on where you believe where this leads. I think it has to do with ad revenue for a lot of these websites, and they get a huge chunk from PlayStation. PlayStation owns the media. I'm not backing down from that, folks. Sorry, that's just how I feel. If I'm wrong, then and I'm proven wrong, I'll admit it. But I'm sorry. I do believe that there are quite a few places that are heavily invested by PlayStation, and even when there is something to discuss, you don't have to harp on it. You don't have to write hate based articles on a game. You could just give the game the business that it's deserved. If it deserves praise, you give it to them. If it deserves criticism, you do not shy away from that. You give it evenly, but that, in fact, is not the case here. Listen, Steele, before I bring you in, brother, I want to catch up on Super Chats, and then we will get your hot take on this. Will Broke Boy Lewis, generous friend of the program, has once again, ladies and gentlemen, gifted 5 Double Barrel Gaming memberships. Please, if you did get one of these memberships from Will, thank him in the chat. I'm sure he'd be happy for that. And, of course, I'd be greatly appreciated of it that if you did thank him for getting one of the subs. Simon Brandy, a generous friend of the program, drops an outstanding £5 super chat. And Simon goes on to say, after 23 years with Xbox, I'm done. Keeley gloating was my wake-up call. Sick of being a second-class citizen. I dislike Sony, but I'm getting a PlayStation 5 Pro. Listen, brother, I understand your disappointment. Games going over to PlayStation. Was in your camp, and again, I'm an old school cat. If I was up to me and I was running Xbox, I wouldn't put anything on PlayStation. I just wouldn't. I would make it so that you had to buy an Xbox. But that's not the world that we're living in. I don't excuse it. I don't like it, but that is the reality. The only thing I could say, Simon, is, again, going over to PlayStation, they have a great console. I love the DualSense. It doesn't last long with the battery, but I like the PlayStation 5 hardware is pretty sound hardware, and a Pro is probably going to be a pinch better. How much better than the Series X, I don't know, but it's probably going to be a pinch better. The only issue at hand here is you go from getting your games in a service to now having to buy these games for $76.43. Now, if you have spendable cash like that, I hear you. And you're like, yeah, hands up, Xbox. No pushback here, brother. I'm just saying that the main draw for me isn't just Game Pass. I like my achievements. I like my friends list. I like ease of access. I like the UI on the Xbox, even though they don't have blades and those unfortunately will never come back. But I like everything about Xbox, and a game going over to PlayStation, whether it be a month, 3 months, 6 months, and a year, it's not going to lessen the enjoyment for me playing a game like Indiana Jones. That's going to be going over to PlayStation at some point in the spring of 2025. I will have beaten it 3 times over by the time PlayStation plays it, and any PlayStation gamer plays it. So, yeah, but I hear you, brother. Thank you so much for the generosity. Our Markman05 drops a very generous $5 super chat, and he says, we've seen games updated to 60 frames months later. At some point, you'll have to admit it's the game developers / development process. I mean, that goes right to what Steele was saying. I think Steele really knocked it out of the park. I think ultimately that right there is the issue. Where is the loss in translation from, during the development process? And that just might be something that Fuzzy said. They are, no matter how much power they are given, they're still always going to focus. And again, until there's a standard, until there's like, hey, you got to hit 60. Until there's a groundwork standard, they're going to get to 30 and then do all of the lighting and the detailed in the armor and the leather and the weapons. And again, I like that. So I'm a bit of a graphics whore, so I don't mind that. But I listen, again, I make no excuses. If you are someone who wants to play at 60 and you have an issue with this, you should be able to speak about it and honestly and have a conversation. Again, because 30 is okay for me doesn't mean that there isn't you can't criticize why it's not 60. JJ Sane 117 drops a very generous $2 super chat, and he goes on to say, fun fact, Redfall has played more than Concord. LOL. Yeah, I mean that's truth. But it is what it is. Concord it's just not a good game, man. It's just not. It's very, very vanilla in everything that it does. And that's the problem. Will Broke Boy Lewis drops not 1, but 2 additional $5 super chats. And Will goes on to say, I've seen some PlayStation fanboys saying, why are you ripping on Concord still? It's out and over. MFs are still talking about Redfall a year and a half later. Yeah, again, it's a double standard, brother. That's what it is. It's whether that be the just the gaming populace, the community, or even the gaming media. I mean, look, I don't like to bring names into conversation, but there was a particular article that said, "Hey, Concord not doing so bad, rated 53rd on the PlayStation Store." How is that? How is that a story, man? Like, for real?
At launch, though, that's the thing. Like, I can see if the game was several months old. Hey, it's still in the top 50. No, it's just recently launched, and it's already down to 42. Like,
it's a story.
That's a boat anchor.
It's again. What are you serious? This is a professional journalist that wrote that. Hey, 53rd. That's really great. Come on. I mean, really? When you hit the enter button on your computer, you were like, yeah, this is gonna move. This clicks. Come on, be better. Be better than that. Will Broke Boy Lewis drops an additional $5 super chat, and he says, if Concord had technical issues at launch like Redfall did, the lack of players would be understandable. Concord is worse. No one wants to play it, and that's ultimately the facts. Two more super chats here, and we'll bring Steel in. Thunderdome Gaming Society, who's been a channel member for almost a year, brother. Thank you so much for the incredible support. He says oh my goodness, the
hypocritical.
Saying, the hypocriticalness is ridiculous. Sorry, I can't pronounce the word. I don't know what I'm doing. Last year, they wanted to boycott Hogwarts Legacy, and it was shunned at the Game Awards. This year, give Concord a chance. That's the gaming media. Hypocrisy. Thank you. I don't know why I couldn't pronounce that. It's the craziest thing. I had a brain fart live on the air. My apologies, folks. And Simon Brandy drops an additional very generous £2 super chat, and he says, I like to own games, boom, never sub to game. Listen, okay, then you know what? Then PlayStation 5 is for you. Hopefully the Pro is what we think it is, and that it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be leaps and bounds better than the Series X or, the X, but listen, brother, if you buy your games, then going over to PlayStation where you will have to, wait a little while to play them on your console versus getting them earlier because they're going to release first on Xbox. If you don't mind waiting, brother, then that's fine. Again, you're not a monster because you're tired of Xbox's, mismessaging. A lot of people don't like what they're doing, and a lot of people are going to PC because of it. You're going to go to PlayStation, brother. That's fantastic. If the PlayStation Pro releases and you're going to enjoy the console, the ecosystem, that's phenomenal. Okay, he drops an additional $2 super chat and says, I will never be a pony. Boom, I hate him. Yeah, just because you have a PlayStation and you enjoy it doesn't make you a pony. It makes you a PlayStation gamer. When people use the terminology ponies or bots, it's because these are the parts of the community that I do not like, because they use hate-driven conversation to get their point across, and I don't like hate-driven narratives. I just don't. But Steel Rain, let's bring you in and discuss Concord. And again, this isn't just Concord is a bad game. The problem that no one wants to recognize, and what I have not seen from the gaming media here, is the fact that there are a lot of question marks to what happens to Sony next. Now, granted, I don't think Sony put all of their eggs in one basket for this being the only gas game that they're making. I believe Bend Studios is working on something. They might have another one in development. Obviously, we've already talked about Jade Raymond's game. Fair Games is going to be releasing. I don't think it's this year. It's definitely going to be next year. But then when you start to look at the playing field, and this is where I pull a steel rein, pull yourself back, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
Pull yourself back into that RTS view and just look at the playing field.
Mhm.
Now, Sony had a very standard, fair playbook, and it worked super well for them. In 2018, 2019, 2020, they dropped bomb after bomb after bomb in single-player, story-driven, adult-themed games. Now, maybe those games weren't for you, but almost 90-something% of those games were for me. And that's why I had a PS4 Pro, and I bought all those games, and that's why I bought a PS5.
Well, they brought them to PC. So
right,
yeah,
right. And there you go. But when you pull yourself back, that's not the same PlayStation, ladies and gentlemen. They haven't been that PlayStation in years. Whether that be 18 months or 24 months, they have not been the same since some big changes happened internally. And when you look at where they're going now, there's no roadmap. And the only thing that we do know is coming were these gas games. Obviously, Fair Games, I think it's going to flop. We've heard from Jason Schreier and many other people behind the scenes that Marathon is a disaster. This Concord comes out, it's another disaster. So the question is, where does Sony pivot? When does somebody take the reins? Because if there's no roadmap and we have no idea what first party is making in regards to the bangers they're known for, and they already have games that look and sound like they're going to fail upon release in their gas games, to suggest that Sony is not in a bit of a tailspin, or as simplistic as you can get, the left hand knowing what the right hand is doing, and then of course both hands washing the face. I don't know what else you could see or ask for proof. Let's get your thoughts, man.
The proof right now in the pudding is that Sony is completely lost in the sauce as far as it comes to online gaming in totality. They hit one with Helldivers 2, but again, that is not their first party. So still, you have to take in consideration on what their true plan is moving forward. Again, being known for single player games is great and all. And I think they should continue to do that. But they have also, and I think that why this is such a big topic, and it should continue to be a big topic, is things have to move forward. And Sony has made it blatantly obvious that they want to move things forward. They're bringing everything to PC, all the games that people said that weren't going to come, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Last of Us 2, all these games are coming to PC or are on PC currently. So obviously there has been a change in the dichotomy that is known as Sony. Now, the one thing that I want to give Concord is it is seemingly getting more console attention than it is on PC. There is about, I want to say 8,000 reviews on the PlayStation Store, I believe, that I saw earlier. Don't quote, correct me if I'm wrong on that. So obviously there are other people playing it now. Could Sony have used bots to try to jump those numbers up? Heck yeah, they could have. Companies do these things to make things look a certain way for business, right? So if I was going to take it to true and say, man, well, this is more of a console, this is more of a game that speaks to the console player. Sure. But the one thing that is undeniable is that typically the Sony console player is not a multiplayer PvP online type of gamer. They are more single player focused typically. And bringing these live service games into their ecosystem is something that is of newer standing. I know people go back to, we had games like SOCOM, which supposedly, rumor have it, and take it with a grain of salt, SOCOM was canceled for Concord. So again, I have to ask again. That's a rumor. Take it as
it was a military shooter, but I mean, come on.
I would have to imagine that would have been SOCOM. If it's not SOCOM, then they were trying to create something completely different. But again, the problem that I personally have with Sony per se, and part of the reason I don't believe in investing in their ecosystem, is because they have blatantly shown me that they do not respect their player base or care for their player base. To me, it has come across as if they have closed their eyes and just said, "Hey, man, whatever sounds good, just keep doing what we've been doing, and we'll figure it out later." And they keep pushing that ball down the road, or they'll put it in the corner for a bit and say, "Nah, man, it's all good. These people love it. They're buying consoles. Man, it's all great. It doesn't matter how many are turned on or not. Oh, it's all good." But then you see them making these changes. And again, I get that people are like, "Man, we got all these consoles sold. We got all these people in our ecosystem." Sure. But there's also something to be said on why are they implementing so much sooner than later a PlayStation Network infrastructure on PC, if that's the case, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, well, they don't need to make this push. They don't need the PC audience, man. They're good in the console space." Obviously, they're not, right? Something is changing behind the scenes, but it's changing in a manner where, again, I have to take everything at face value from what we were given, right? The information that we were given. Bungie, especially from coming out of the FTC and everything, was supposed to come in to help PlayStation understand what it is to make a live service game, or to help build up some of that infrastructure. Could that still happen? Sure. But you're talking about a company in Bungie who has their own problems, had been having their own problems for a while. So now they have to rectify those issues. You had Bungie come and critique some of the projects that you had under your belt, but Concord passed. Everything else, I'm telling you guys, just like the point that you made earlier, Boom, in comparison, if they would have at least set Concord to the side for a year and actually launched factions or put more people onto factions, the reason that I can agree with you, and I think other people should be able to see just conceptually why that game would have worked and been more unique in the space, and I guarantee you probably would have had 20,000 concurrent players playing right now, is because there is no other third-person game on the market that is like that. Anybody that played the first factions would be able to tell you and demonstrate, and I implore anybody who has a PlayStation 4 to boot up factions, that Last of Us 2 online. I mean, Last of Us 1 online. Well, I mean, because they in the original PlayStation 4 version, because they took it out, the remastered one, not the remake, the remastered one, because they took it out of that one for whatever reason. But anyway. But you go back to that original and look across the market and see if there's anything else even close to comparison. And to me, the closest thing that you could probably say is Gears, but it's not even remotely close in how those games play. The next thing you could probably say, let's keep it in the same ecosystem, is Uncharted, but it's not even remotely in the way those games play, from at least what I've seen. I've never experienced Uncharted. I've only observed, but I have played a good bit of factions, right? So it is, to me, the issue that I'm finding is, even with this whole Concord scenario, the reason that Concord isn't doing great, I'll just make it extremely simple for everybody. It's not an attractive game. Point blank, period. Regardless if the game is good, regardless of how much content that there is in it, if you do not have cool characters, nobody cares. We are in gaming. This is a form of entertainment. If I wanted to go outside and see normal people, I would go outside and see normal people, right? Or see the more diverse. Now, again, the thing that's confusing to me is that you can still have the diversity, the inclusion, the thing that everybody gets so up in arms about. And it's like, "Oh man, if I put one black dude in it, it's cool then, right? Doesn't matter how he looks." No, man, I would still like this man to be cool. Oh, I put an Asian in it, it's good. I put a girl in it, she's small, got an ugly one in there, got a cute one in there. Bro, but are they cool? Do they stand out for themselves? You have a hero-based game where the heroes don't represent heroes. Bro, when I think of heroes, the first thing I'm thinking of is somebody that I could probably get an action figure for, or somebody that I would put on a wallpaper. None of those characters are wallpaper-worthy characters. Whereas when you look at Overwatch, when you looked at Paladins, when you looked at Team Fortress, when you look at all these other hero-based styled games, you have appealing characters regardless of how other people feel about it. And I don't think even Overwatch is the most creative game that I've ever played visually as far as art direction goes. But I can say the reason, for an example, a Marvel Rivals, who again, for the sake of conversation, like, oh, well, and everybody says they don't want these team-based games, but then Marvel Rivals comes out and is exactly an Overwatch clone, and now you guys are excited about it, but not for Concord. Well, guess what? Marvel Rivals is using a universe that has already existed for 100 years at almost this point. Not only that, they got a dope freaking art style. So it works. You have a door. You're doing and they're doing very similar things to what Concord is doing. Characters all releasing, only paying for skins, more of a roadmap, all these things that we like. But the number one thing that is not there is the game is not attractive. It's not appealing to anybody. It does come across bland. I've heard about some of the underlying systems and the team-based mechanic that they have where you can have your own kind of squad, right? And you can level up that squad in Concord to where so you have a squad of 3 different characters that you use, and each character that you use gets their own passive. And as you progress through the game, you can use these different passives. It sounds like it has cool things going on for it, but it's not speaking to the wider audience. And again, as much as the console players may be able to carry it up front, maybe even a little bit, it is a PC styled game.
Yep.
The PC gamers are going to determine whether that game is going to continue to exist as is. Why? Because Gears of War has proven it. Halo has proven it. There are games that just not the console players are going to be the base de facto. Not only that, but this isn't, considering when those games came out almost 20 years ago. There is a lot of competition, too many games to play out there. You gotta be not only unique, but be a good game as well. So that's kind of where I want to tie everything up with some of the points that y'all brought in. But yeah, man, it's just unfortunate to see a decent seemingly playing game have a lot of the not get its attention or not get its just dues, because you have people behind the scenes up top, Sony, who are, again, I've been making posts here recently asking people, like, just making statements that why does the publisher that we look to for quality, quote unquote, is not delivering iconic characters? Concord should have had those iconic characters, right? Because you're Sony, right? You have that creativity. I thought that's why you were respected in this industry. Aren't you one of the grandpappies of gaming? Where is some of that wherewithal? Where is some of that know-how? Where is some of that finger on the pulse that I would expect from you? So,
I mean, it's great points all around. Shout out to the chat. We got almost 650 people here watching live across Siri, across X, and of course YouTube. Thank you so much for checking out today's show. We super appreciate you being here. We do have one other topic we're going to get into. The Star Wars one. I kind of want to play it for myself before I talk about some of the reviews, because listen, the reviews, I've seen a lot of video. It's not optimized good at all. It's just not. But I still want to play it myself. I do. Again, I'm going to play it through Ubisoft Plus. So I get the 3-day early access. I want to play it. It was one of my most anticipated games of the year. I'm a Star Wars stan. I love Star Wars, and the fact that we were going to get a chance to see this from the eyes of a scoundrel, which sounds dope. But so far, it's not getting a lot of good buzz. And that's sad, because I'm a big fan of Ubisoft. Specifically, the engine you see in front of you is the engine that they're using for Star Wars Outlaws. And man, that game is it's got some troubles. Let's just say that. But I do kind of want to just quickly bring in Black Myth Wukong conversation. Now, obviously, there are a lot of people playing this game, and I've watched many videos. The game looks gorgeous. The boss battles look phenomenal. It's been reported that it has some issues. Jay Fonzarelli beat the game. He said, unfortunately, as much as he enjoyed it, the 6th chapter was a complete shit show. That it was broken. He did enjoy himself. I think he gave it a 7.5 or 7 out of 10. Umbra's enjoying it. He's playing through it right now. I do want to play it, but I don't play on PC, and I'm not playing it with a DualSense. I'd rather use the Xbox controller. So I will wait for the Xbox version, whenever that may be. And again, it's one of those things that when it comes out, hopefully it'll be optimized, and all of the issues that are currently happening now, they won't be there. But we'll see. Now, what I want to bring into a conversation is, well, there's been a lot of talk, Steel, about why it was delayed. Now, there was a lot of talk about money hatting. There was talk about technical issues. Well, we got some concrete information of exactly what happened. And of course, I want to thank our very good friend, Ecstasies. He's a Spanish YouTuber that has a lot of really great connections within the industry. And he tweeted something yesterday that basically breaks down from soup to nuts, so to speak, of what exactly happened if you are someone on Xbox like me who really wants to play this game, but unfortunately we can't. We have to wait for it to come out. Check this out, folks. Ecstasies goes on to say this in an official tweet from his Twitter account. Xbox at Gamescom, I spoke to Xbox insiders and developers who informed me about a technical issue affecting the release of Black Myth Wukong on Xbox consoles. The game is reportedly suffering from a bug known as, quote, memory leak, which can cause significant crashes due to compromise while compromising the performance of your Xbox console. Due to this issue, the game has not passed Xbox's bug detection test and therefore have been identified as an, in fact, delay until they manage to optimize the game for both the Xbox Series X and S. The studio, according to Ecstasies, is already working hard to resolve this issue and achieve the necessary certification. Once they get approval, they plan to set a release date for the game, but they don't, as of now, know when or how that is going to happen. But other than that, other than the era of the game, it is, well, it's the only thing that's giving it a problem. So, Steel, the memory leak that he's talking about, I'm not a tech guy, so I don't understand what that means. But obviously, it did not pass certification multiple times based on what Ecstasies is saying and based what other people are saying, because there were some other stories out there. Hazardor Gaming actually posted it as well, where it just it could not pass certification. And that is at the Xbox level for them to give it the seal of approval, pat on the ass, send them on their way, release to the masses. I'm glad they have systems like that in check. Again, PC, there's been some reported issues. PlayStation, there's been a ton of issues. A lot of people, including the media, don't want to report on it, but there are issues there as well. Let's break this down. Memory leak being the culprit, if you will, to the bugs hampering the Xbox Series X and S version of this game.
Oh man, if it does end up being a memory leak, again, it just comes down to fixing the game, man. Getting that optimization back right. That's something that it's on more so on the coding side of things, and it's just blatantly obvious even on PC. There's no reason why, even for me playing at 1080p, I can get 100 frames, 100 plus frames if I wanted to, for sure. But it typically stays around 60, and without that, it kind of gets my GPU a little bit hotter than it typically should, especially running at 1080p. Okay. So it's like there are blatant optimization issues. I don't know if the publisher that they're under or whatever the case needed just to see a return on the project. There could very well be. I mean, again, I like to pull myself out of it a little bit, look at that grander scope and just see what could the possibilities have been, right? Because seemingly the game is extremely successful, right? Over 10 million copies first week. That is extremely impressive for any game, honestly, right? Especially from a developer where this is literally pretty much their first game and it's getting the AAA quality treatment, right? As far as the wider audience and how people are grabbing onto it, regardless of where most of the traction is coming from, right? Even if you say 80% of the people are from China buying it, that still is 2 million in your first week for a brand new IP. And that's still solid if you keep that in America from how we look at things, right? So it's like, this obviously there is something unique here. Obviously there was a lot that was going on here. And to me, I think it's for better or for worse, because people are going to use it as the negative as far as conversation. That is the proper thing for Xbox to do. Again, that is one of the number one things that Xbox gets hammered on about as well, is their certification process. There's plenty of people who don't like it, don't enjoy it, say it always takes forever to go through it. But again, this is why that process exists. And I see Leo make the comment in chat. He says, Wukong won't exist on the Series S. And at this point, I'm not going to sit here and believe any of that. I keep hearing people say everything about the Series S. Oh, it's not going to be able to do these things. And then 3 months later, it's able to do exactly all the things that people said it couldn't do. So obviously, it is coming more so down to optimization more than ever. Again, Baldur's Gate 3 is the easiest example of this. They thought it wasn't going to be possible on the Series S, especially possibly even looking at getting 60. And they ended up getting what was it, like a 30% plus bonus in performance with the optimization that they were trying to do for the Series S across the board for all platforms. That should demonstrate to you. I mean, again, I understand it was like, oh man, you only saw a 2 to 5% increase, right? They're like, it's decent, but it's not. But when you start to talk about 20 plus % on anything as an improvement in performance delta is extremely wild for on just an optimization side, performance side of things. So I think it's going to be the same thing here, man. I'm glad that, I'm not glad that Xbox is missing on an opportunity to potentially sell more consoles if it is true that the game is selling PlayStation 5s, because this is a game where it is in one of the handful of games where I say, man, this is a next generational game. This is a Black Myth Wukong is one of those. And it's not because, they're doing something brand new with combat. No, but the things that we look for in current generation out of our games, as far as the detail goes, Black Myth Wukong has. The leaves moving when you're swinging your weapons, the deformation, sand, snow, or different type of territories, how you affect the world around you, how the world interacts with you. Like, there's just so many things that you are like, man, this should be such a typical thing that we should be expecting, but it's not what we get in every game. They nailed those things here, right? This is a smaller team. This team started off as, I believe, with less than 5 people and had to expand out from the last time we seen it 2 or 3 years ago. And this is the product that they delivered day one. Outside of performance, and again, Jedi Survivor was given these very same passes day one. Fuzzy can attest to that. To this day, he's on a vengeance. He'll turn into Batman over Jedi Survivor, vigilante style. I'm telling you, bro. And I had a amazing experience with Jedi Survivor, but I also spoke to, hey, why when I go back to this cantina spot, when I go to this planet, why is it chopping up for 10, 15 minutes at a time when I'm in this area? Now, when I leave, it's better, but like every time I come back, it is like this. The frame rate cuts in half again, and I'm playing at 1080p, ladies and gentlemen. Y'all want 4K in 1440p. I'm playing at 1080p on a 3080 Ti on a 5900X. I'm not playing on some average run-of-the-mill PC. This is what you would consider above average, right? And you're running across these issues on the PC platform. So to me, the biggest picture, I think, for this generation, the biggest word that I want to put on it is optimization across the board. But I do want to give big ups to the team for selling the 10 million copies. Black Myth Wukong, amidst all the other things, because I don't believe in punishing an entire team of developers for 1, 2, 3 people's weird behaviors, right? If some of those rumors are to be true. it has come out to be a very unique experience. I got probably almost 60 hours in it. Haven't beat it yet. Haven't beat it quite yet. Tons of content to be had in there. One of the most, I would say, one of the most welcoming, Souls like experiences, because it's not a Souls game. It's not. It's definitely more action oriented. I was telling Pong that it's more of the line along the lines of a Ninja Gaiden. If you were able to get through Ninja Gaiden, you can get through Black Myth Wukong, right? So that's kind of where I'm at on it. But yeah, man, as far as the memory leak situation goes, in the performance delta, we need to stay on top of these developers' heads about the optimization. I don't care what anybody else is talking about in the industry, man. We as consumers, this is still the number one form of entertainment that we have a large say-so in. I just want us, along with like the 30 to 60 conversation, because even Black Myth has it on PlayStation 5. You see people saying, oh man, it plays amazing over here. But then you have two or three different modes in there. That one mode is using frame gen, which essentially what that is, it's making it look like it's 60, but it feels like it's at 30 play wise. That's not what you want in an action oriented game, because of how the hits happen and everything. It's very dodge heavy and things like that. So again, it's like you're giving options, but the options aren't fleshed out, or the options aren't the best, but you have all these options here, but you're finding out you got memory leaks here. And it's just like, what happened in development? Is this just a small team thing? It's just interesting to see how things play out. So.
Well, it's good to know that you're enjoying it. 60 hours of anything is, that said that you're enjoying the game. That's awesome. Again, this is a very small team. The Xbox version will release at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to wait. I'm happy to wait so there aren't any memory leak situations.
Yeah.
It didn't pass.
It's going to be a good game to wait on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm buying it day one. No doubt about that. Fuzzy, let's get your hot take and we'll get everyone out of here. Again, confirmation that it did not pass certification. There was a lot of talk about why they did it. Were they paid extra money by Sony? I still think yes. But again, it didn't pass certification. That ultimately now has been confirmed by XSEs and several others, and that's a big problem. Nobody wants the game to come out and just not work or be broken from inception. When it releases, I would imagine, and again, I don't even know if that's this year. And if it's not, that's perfectly fine. There are so many games coming out waiting until this thing is optimized so it runs the best on your Series X and your S. If yes, where you're going to play it, I'm okay with. What are your thoughts, man?
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting on the fence as well for right now. Like I planned on getting it on PC. I wasn't going to wait for it to come to console, but with some of the issues that are out there, I figure I'll wait until it goes to its like first phase of sale. So probably in the next 2 weeks. I mean, I could probably get it on CD keys for less than what the retail was. Oh, yeah. But I'm just going to wait at the moment. But it does make sense that it's not on Xbox, given that they're having the problems with certification. Hopefully they get that figured out. And Steel not just knocked it out of the park. He nailed it as far as like a lot of these devs like to blame the Series S, or a lot of people in general like to blame the Series S, but it's a different kit or a different type of build as far as things are concerned. People have to understand the PS5 is kind of like an evolution of the PS4, which and when you hear that, it sounds like, well, that makes common sense. You would just make it a better version of a PS4, and that's all their kit is. When you start looking at the RDNA 2 aspect of things, that's why when not Baldur's Gate, but like for Baldur's Gate 3 with Larian, once they actually sat down and looked at how the kit was meant to be coded for, that's how they were able to then get that extra performance to all the platforms. Because please understand, when you build for the Series X, it's like turning a dial to dial it back for the Series S. Xbox made it extremely easy for devs. The drawback is even some of their first party aren't necessarily using the tools initiated, but then again, some of these games were started before these toolkits were out there, so you're kind of stuck with that. It's not like you're going to go back to the drawing board and build it based off of that platform at this point. But I think that's where a lot of the issues with some games being either less performant or not coming to Xbox because of, let's say, quote unquote, the Series S, when in reality, it's more so that they're not properly coding for the Series X and then dialing it back for the Series S. Because in a lot of cases, and I know many of people have said this, even Steele has mentioned this before, where if you look at the stats on the Series S, the raw hardware that's in it, like the chipset, and you compare it to like the minimum specs on a lot of PC listings for games, it's above that by a good bit. So I don't know why people still like to pick at the potato. I mean, I know I'm poking fun calling it a potato, but it's like this. If you can get things like Starfield to 60 frames on that, and a lot of games 120 frames on that piece, that's not the problem. The problem is either taking the time or making the focus or priority to prioritize coding for those, SDKs or those kits themselves. But as far as Black Myth Wukong, it looks like it's going to be a fun game to eventually get into. But right now, I'm kind of revisiting Atomic Heart before it leaves Game Pass. So I kind of have that covering some time, as well as Diablo, because I'm getting ready for the expansion. Loving the Season 5 and what they've done between Season 4 and Season 5 as far as the grind. Doesn't feel as grindy per se. So I'm not, I don't feel like I'm missing out. But like Steele said, kudos to those guys for getting 10 million copies sold. This is one of those things where I kind of wish maybe back when Xbox was first hearing of this game, maybe they could have sent some of the wizards over there from their engineering team maybe to help out. And I know if you do that for one dev, you're probably going to have to do that for tons of devs, but that would have been the game. And I think we all collectively as gamers saw that this was going to be a special game, not necessarily on the same level as Elden Ring, but kind of in that same ballpark type of thing without it being a licensed IP or anything. It felt like it was going to be a special game. So I wish they would have recognized that and maybe have taken some preemptive or preventative measures to avoid, this fallout where it's not really a fault of their own. It's just more so a fault of, their dev kit not being the popular, kit to program for at this point in time. But all of that being said, for those that are going to patiently wait for it to come to Xbox, I think you'll be happy with it. And you won't be a beta tester at that point. Pretty much you'll have probably whatever bug fixes. You'll probably have it where all the performance mode stuff is ironed out. And if there's any expansion stuff, by that point, that will be probably closer to availability. So it wouldn't be as long of a wait. So in some regards, it probably pans out better that it comes later, much like with Baldur's Gate 3 coming later, considering that you have Call of Duty later this year, you have Indiana Jones later this year, and if you're into Sims, you have Flight Sim 2024 later this year, and you have a ton of other games, third party as well, that will definitely probably take up a good bit of your time. But it sucks, but hey, the certification's there for a reason. Because I'm pretty sure if people bought the game and it was, crashing much like Cyberpunk did for the previous gen.
You complain about that.
Yeah, people would be like, I need a refund.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, nobody wants to spend their $70 and have a game not work. So this is ultimately why these games have to be tested. They have to pass certification, and this one didn't, and that's fine. That is fine. It's not like it's been wiped away from the fact that we're not going to get an Xbox version. You're going to get one. They're working on it right now. It's just going to take some time. And I'm glad, shout out to XCs for that story and the information regarding some real clarification that people were looking for. Hopefully you folks enjoyed today's show. Let's get everyone out of here. Let me just catch up on these last couple of super chats. Jay Rambert drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, bots don't hate PlayStation, just their fanboys. Yeah, I mean, the toxic nature of both communities is just something I stay away from. I don't like it because people take things personally.
Mm-hmm.
They do things and say things they're not supposed to. Ultimately, it's just video games, folks. You can have an opinion, but man, being mean the way some people are is just unnecessary at times.
Going personal when we're talking about
Gross.
games, bro.
Games, yes.
I mean, people used to do it in jokes and stuff too, and I don't like it there either. Like anytime that you got to go personal, it obviously shows who you are as an individual, and I'm going to take you at that value, regardless if you think that it's jokes or whatever else the case might be, because there's other ways to be funny, especially with people that you may not know like that. So
exactly. Lastly, Jay Slay. Actually, we have two more. Jay Slay drops a very generous $5 super chat. It says, don't people understand that you don't truly own games, physical or not? Discs are only contain a license. This own my games theory is ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, if they decide to pull the licenses and remove access, even if you have the disc, you can't play it. So technically, you are buying a disc, and the game is on that disc, but ultimately, it's a license key that they're giving you the ability to use. Lastly, Decado drops a very generous $10 super chat. And Decado goes on to say, Star Wars is in its release phase. Time for Massive to return to the Division. I mean, yes. Yeah, please. Division 3. I mean, again, this is why we don't have a Division 3. Great point, Decado, because they were working on the Star Wars game. I'd like to see them return to their roots and continue the story. I mean, there's so much story left that could be told in the Division, especially Division 3. And it doesn't have to be a return to New York or Washington. It could be somewhere that we've never been before, or it could be multiple places, which is where I hope that they go.
I want to see them go to Japan. I think the Division in Japan would be fire. Going to different islands within Asia, that would be super dope.
I just want snow. I just want
Japan in any game, and it's already a winner for me. That's just me. So I'm sold on that. But listen, let's get everyone out of here. We'll start first here with Steel Rain, brother. By all means, sell the brand of Living Split Screen, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Saturday mornings, with yourself and, of course, your brother from another, Pong Soul. Where can people subscribe? Check out last Saturday's show, where you really break down the 30 versus 60, and more importantly, follow you on social media.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me, Steel Rain, the T is a 7 everywhere. Google's the easiest place to type that information in. But I do frequent the streets of Twitter, otherwise known as X, and also the Xbox ecosystem, just because it works so well between the console and the PC itself. And also every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, and 3 p.m. UK time, me and my brother from another, Pong Soul, go live with Living Split Screen. Again, it's a non-console centric platform that talks about everything in the industry. Just like today, we'd like to take that RTS approach, pull ourselves out of the world, look at those darker crevices so we can build up our foundation for our conversations for all the games across the board. But we also believe in that ECP, man, because again, a lot of us do not work in the gaming industry. A lot of us are not journalists, but that ECP, educated consumer perspective, I'm pretty sure a lot of us do either have or had professional lives. You have knowledge that you could bring to the table to have smart conversations, dope conversations, and really just hammer out some of the unknowns in this gaming industry that we love and care so much, not only on the gaming standpoint, but talking about it as well. And boom, Buzz, it's always dope chopping it up with you guys, because you guys bring your own opinion to it, stand on business, something that I appreciate and will forever love. And it's just always a good time being able to chop it over, my brother. So much love. Y'all stay safe out there in chat. And boom, appreciate you for having me.
Thank you so much, brother. And again, folks, apologies for me misspeaking earlier and going off camera a couple of times. I had my 9/11 physical today, or at least the start of it, and it took 7 tubes of blood, and I'm starting to feel it right now. I drank some juice, and that's just not cutting the mustard. So I'm going to have to eat something after this. I'm feeling a little sluggish, to be honest, but I'm okay. Listen, it is what it is. You got to get yourself checked, and they check for everything. But Fuzzy Belvedere, let's sell the brand of not only your podcast that you're on, and you're on quite a few of them. You have a YouTube channel that is, of course, dedicated to anything and everything in racing. But your wife has a horror podcast, which she does Friday evenings when she's not starring or in motion pictures. brother, sell both brands. Where can they follow you on social media, subscribe to your YouTube channel, and more importantly, follow the missus and check out her new horror podcast that launched a couple of weeks ago?
Well, as always, just want to thank you for having me on. And it was awesome having Steel Rain on here this morning as well. Just love your guys' takes on things. This was an awesome conversation and a lot of awesome points, not just by us, but many people in the chat. There was some respectable conversations going back and forth out there. So greatly appreciate you guys, taking the time, joining us, hanging out. If you haven't already, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already. Greatly appreciate the time and effort. For those that want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, just follow me on the app formerly known as Twitter at fuzzy_Belvedere. And then for my wife, for those that are not just gaming fans, but fans of horror films, whether it be slashers, zombies, vampires, and whatnot, go ahead and follow Ferocious Fee 78 on Twitter or X. And I put the link in the chat for her YouTube channel. So check out some of the podcasts that we've done in the past. And then we have a new one where it's going to be a sleepaway camp kind of horror film that we're going to discuss this Friday. And that's every Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at night or in the evening. But for those that want to hear gaming stuff from me, check out FSP later on tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Fun Speculations channel. And then hope everybody is right back here in the chat on Friday morning for Breakfast with Boom at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Friday. Look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely. And again, shout out to Sloth in the chat. He says, damn, 7 tubes of blood. Yes, I was down at ground zero for 46 days. And a lot of people got sick. And I'm retired. And I want to make sure that the NYPD pays me until the cows come home. So I leave that's at my request. I leave no stone unturned. And I did it literally right before I went to did the show. And I'm like, I'm going to be fine. I work out every day. I feel great. I don't feel so good, folks. I'll be honest with you, but I'm okay. I'll live. But listen, thank you again for everyone being here. We had over 600 people watching live. Again, if you enjoyed the conversation, please consider hitting the like button. If you are someone that are not already subscribed, please consider subscribing. We are now on the march towards 16K. We hit 15K a couple of weeks ago. And like I said, this is still a small channel. We are always happy to get new subs. And of course, the chat was awesome. Even if we don't agree, everyone had great opinions. No one was bullying each other, which is something we look forward to here. This is supposed to be about video games, and we're supposed to have fun. Even if we don't agree, we can still walk away and be gentlemen. So again, thank you to everyone for being here. A big thank you to all of the super chats and the new channel memberships that continue to come in. We are greatly appreciative of the support. And again, this is why Mrs. Boom and I put it back into the channel by paying it forward, by doing the big giveaways. And we have a lot coming up for you folks during the holidays. And of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's incredibly important to me. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special.